Woo! You're here, and I'm freaking excited for you. Honestly, the journey you're going to embark on is a really special one. And what I want to answer right now for you is, what are the gene keys? And I'm going to give you my interpretation of it. There's many of them out there. Basically, everybody who's working with them in some way probably has their own interpretation. And of course, there's also one from Richard Rudd, the founder of this whole system. But my personal interpretation, my personal way of experiencing the gene keys is that it is a library of living wisdom. And I'm using the word wisdom here for a reason, because it's not just information. Information works with our mind, but wisdom works and lives actually within our body. And so as I see it, that the gene keys are a process that actually can evoke and can bring up wisdom from within us that we've forgotten about. It is a process of remembering. It is not actually so much a process of accumulating knowledge. It is really more a process of physically and somatically remembering certain patterns, certain keys within our system that help us live a more joyous, a more easy, a more loving and fulfilling life. So the gene keys are actually built on different systems that came before that. One of them is the Chinese I Ching, which is an ancient oracle. It's one of the sacred texts of this world, where basically all those 64 archetypes were described from a mythical standpoint. You have astrology in there, astrological mapping, using your birth date, birth location, birth time as coordinates to actually calculate what it means to be you. Like, where are you in this big orchestration of the universe? Where are you in this space-time continuum, and also beyond that space-time continuum? What does that mean? What does it mean to be you? And that's what they use those coordinates for, in time and space. And also there's aspects of human design in there. Richard Rudd, the founder of this program, has studied human design for decades before he founded that system of the gene keys. So overall, the gene keys are a library, and it's a living library, and it's a living library of wisdom. So we cannot actually approach those teachings with the mind. We gotta approach them with the body. And that's what I find so beautiful about this system, that it takes us in our body, it makes us slow down, it makes us actually listen. And what I find so utterly beautiful about this teaching is that it gave me the possibility to come back into my experience rather than trying to get out of my experience. And that's why it is so powerful, is because it puts you back to where you belong, which is right here, right now in your body. And it gives you the opportunity to assess, where am I currently? And there's, like, in the gene keys, there's 3 different layers of frequency. Of course, there's hundreds and thousands, and it's a full spectrum. Like, we can't say it's black and white and it's like 3 levels, but the gene keys use 3 stages to simplify the whole thing, which is the shadow, which is basically the victim consciousness, where we kind of feel like we are stuck, where we are confused, where we are in doubt, where we are overwhelmed, where we feel exhausted, and it feels like we're working actually against something, against ourselves, against the world. That's the victim consciousness. And then there's the gift level, which is the second layer, the second stage, which is the creative expression of the shadow. And the creative expression of the shadow means, how do we actually approach the shadow to come into the gift? And then there's the Siddhic plane, which is the divine expression, where, like, everything has been integrated and it is all one, and it's a beautiful thing to contemplate and meditate upon, but it's not really so practical in life. So we're going to be focusing mostly on the shadow and on the gift. And so the premise of the gene keys is that you don't need to get rid of your shadows, but you gotta integrate them. And by integrating, it means you embrace them. You actually softly approach them. You learn to love them. And instead of playing into this urge, this compulsion almost, to get out of the shadow, we actually want to allow ourselves to have compassion and arrive in the shadow, and to truly embody it, to understand it, and to learn how to move with it, instead of constantly resisting it and keeping it around. We want to allow the shadow energy to move so that it can transform on its own accord into the higher frequencies. And that's what I would say is the briefest I can make an introduction into this whole system without absolutely overwhelming you. Now the question is, how do we approach and how do we work actually with the gene keys? The way we work with the gene keys is through contemplation. And contemplation is like the middle path between meditation and concentration. So it is the middle path between focusing and surrendering. It is the way of taking this information in, allowing it to penetrate your mind but also your body, and then seeing what your body does with it, surrendering to the process within it. So you focus on those patterns, on those archetypes, on those codes that will be provided. And you allow them to enter your system, and then you let go. And then you see what your body does with them. And that might lead to certain images popping up, certain emotions wanting to be expressed, certain thought patterns swirling around, certain shadows coming to the surface, and you're like, fuck, I didn't want that. I wanted to be free through that shit. And it's like, yeah. The freedom comes through the embrace. The freedom comes through the acceptance. The freedom comes through having compassion for those lower frequencies as well. We got to integrate them. We can't push them away. And so the way we work with the gene keys is actually recognizing, realizing, remembering that the shadows are not our weaknesses. It is perceived weakness. But actually those shadows are the seeds for the flower to grow, to bloom, and to carry fruit. To carry the fruit of the city or of the gift. You know, we want to harvest the fruits of life. We want to have this kind of reward, this feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment in life. But for that, we got to go into the shadow, understand the shadow, embody the shadow, and then also be ready to embody our gifts. So a rule of thumb to work with the shadow and the gift is 10% of your attention goes to the shadow and 90% to your gift. And that's important to keep in mind because honestly, I oftentimes get stuck on the shadow. I oftentimes forget about the gift. I'm like, oh my God, why is this happening again? You know, why am I again forgetting how it is? Why am I again interfering with my life? Why am I again being in this codependent situation that is really not serving anyone? And it's like, okay, but now I got to remember what is the creative expression of it. Like, how do I move through it? How do I really embrace that shadow? What does that shadow actually need? Which approach, which attitude does this shadow need to transform itself into the gift? So that's how we want to work with the gene keys, is through contemplation, through gentleness, through softness. We want to bring in patience. This is nothing that you work through and it's done. I personally have been working with this teaching now for over 3 years, and it's still fucking blowing my mind away and like cracking my heart open every time I get in there. It is a beautiful teaching, it is living wisdom, and so we gotta allow it to live through us. And sometimes I have times when I take a step back and I need some rest from it, and then I feel the urge to come back in. And there's like many different layers to it. And so there is kind of a process of how to work with the gene keys, because at the end the gene keys is just this library of 64 archetypes that have these 3 different layers of consciousness, of frequency. But what do we do with it? So the process of it is called the golden path. And the golden path consists of 3 different sequences. It's the activation sequence, the Venus sequence, and the Pearl sequence. And we are going to be focusing on the activation sequence, which is about your physical genius. It is about the 4 main pillars of your life, your core stability, your life's work, your evolution, your radiance, and your purpose. What you're here to do, what you're here to learn, what keeps you healthy and radiant, and what actually deeply fulfills you. And then there is the Venus sequence and the Pearl sequence, which are incredible teachings as well. But to start with, we want to have this core stability, we want to have this solid foundation of like actually knowing our genius and knowing our place in the world. And that's what we're going to start with. And so there's different spheres in there, different areas, which I just named as life's work, evolution, radiance, and purpose. And then within every single one of those spheres, you have one gene key that is predominant in there, that is kind of the ruling archetype in this area of life. And again, there it is about being curious and about exploring what it means on the shadow, on the gift, and on the Siddhic frequency to live that archetype. And that is, again, there you bring in contemplation, there you bring in like, oh, how do I actually experience this archetype in my life? How do I experience this pattern, this energy in my life? It is actually not about changing yourself according to something that you will learn here or that you will absorb here, but it is really about seeing the connection between your unique personal experience and this archetypal pattern and process. And so on top of that gene key that you have in every single one of those areas, you will have a line. 1 out of 6 lines, and these lines, they are in a certain way general energetic expressions that give another nuance to that gene key, another nuance to that archetype. And those 6 lines, they can be broken down into certain energetical patterns, whereas the first line, for example, it's always about the essence. In the life's work, for example, the first line is the creator. It's about creating something from your internal essence, whereas the second line is the dancer, where it's not just about creating from that essence, but really expressing it with passion into the world. And so you will see that every single line has a certain theme to it, and this theme will give a certain direction and a certain nuance to the archetype you're having in this area. So, to close this thing off, contemplation. Focusing and surrendering, concentration and meditation, absorbing and allowing your body to communicate with you, listening with your whole body, listening with your whole being, not just listening with your ears and your head, allowing yourself to relax into that. And that needs time, and that needs space, that needs patience. So this is nothing to rush at. This is a process that I personally committed myself to for the rest of my life. Somewhere within my being, I know that I will work with the gene keys for the rest of my life because it is such an enriching and ever deepening and expanding process that I can't see stopping at some point. So it is not about actually arriving somewhere. For me, the gene keys are an ally. They're like a companion on my journey, and they allow me to see myself. They operate like a mirror so that I can see myself more clearly and actually find a way to enjoy my journey more rather than putting stones and like all those obstacles in my own way. So I think that should give you an idea of what the gene keys are and how to approach them, how to work with them, how they're structured. And of course, if you have any questions, always reach out to me and ask me those questions. Please, I encourage you to ask for help on this process as well. And other than that, I just wish you a wonderful time with your profile. Stay curious, be patient with yourself, get in there, explore, ask questions if you have any. What I just described to you is the process I found for myself to work with the gene keys. Find your own process. Fall in love with them. Allow them to talk with you, like make them really a companion, a mirror, an ally that supports you on your journey of rediscovering your unique genius. And remember the way that you can actually live your life full of joy and ease and beauty and love and prosperity, and of course also with those challenges that you really need to bring out your pearl, to bring out your beauty, to bring out what you have to share with the world, to actually make this world a more beautiful place, and to find your place and exactly play your note, to play your role in this big collective orchestration of human beings. And that's all you gotta do. And that sounds very simple. It's actually not complex. But the process is challenging because we have a lot of programming, we have a lot of ideas, there's a lot of social, ideological constructs around us. So the idea is you relax back into yourself. And the process of that is refining your understanding of who you truly are. And that's what the gene keys help you with. And that's what I hope to be able to help you with and guide you through. And I'm just really fucking happy that you're here. I could keep on rambling for hours. I'm gonna cut that right now, stop it right here. I wish you a wonderful time with the gene keys. Enjoy the process. I wish you a wonderful fucking day. I love you much. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And now get into your profile and start exploring what it means to be you.